Okay, One Piece chapter 1059, man. I'm not gonna lie. That entire standoff between Blackbeard and Boa Hancock. You guys know I'm not the hugest Boa Hancock fan, but I really would have liked to see more, but it kind of serves to show just how deadly Blackbeard actually is. Like, whenever this dude shows up, Blackbeard at least moves the needle. And I thought that this was a nice bait and switch from the last chapter where you had Sabo getting ready to speak and you had the feeling that Oda was gonna at least start telling you what was happening, but Oda just completely shifts gears. I thought that that was the smart decision to make in order to continue to subvert our expectations and then just kind of show the fallout from that after the fact. Very nice decision there. Now, the other thing that we see here is that we also have Yamato's reasoning being fleshed out even further for why she's actually staying behind. So it wasn't just necessarily when she was fighting against the Admiral, but it was also because Yamato sensed Shanks' Supreme King Haki, and it was one of those things where Yamato realized that there were more powerful guys, even more powerful than the Admiral that they were fighting, who would show up, and she couldn't go on an adventure with Luffy and ride across the seas knowing that somebody that powerful might actually come to Wano. And so she wants to stay behind in order to assist Momo and continue protecting Wano because she doesn't want any regrets. So I like that you see that, and I like how Luffy says, like, dude, just keep in mind, you got to protect Momo and the others for us. And Zoro chimes in with some very interesting information where Zoro says, like, Momo's got a lot of pride as well. Keep that in mind as you continue assisting him. And while you got Brook and you got Sanji in the mud crying over the fact that Yamato's not going to be traveling with them, you have Marco and Luffy make good. And I like that exchange where Marco has a moment where he tells Luffy after he speaks with Jinbei that Ace would have been really proud to actually see how far Luffy's grown. And it just kind of shows you that because of Ace's previous history here on Wano, that this was in a lot of ways Luffy actually burying that plot line with Ace and kind of coming to a conclusion with that storyline. So I like that you saw that, and I like how that followed up what happened with Sabo, because Luffy, in a lot of ways, that's a connection to both Sabo, his other brother, as well as Ace, the brother that's being talked about now. And you got the fact that Luffy's father is also the one that is talking to Luffy's, and you got the fact that Luffy's father is also talking to and you got the fact that Luffy's father is also talking to Ace in this, and you got the fact that Luffy's father is also talking to Sabo. That was a very nice way to kind of stitch everything together from the end of the last chapter to the beginning of this chapter. Even though the three brothers are not in the same space anymore and one of them's dead, you still have all three of them symbolically stitched together in these chapters here. So I thought that that was kind of cool to see that bit. Now, the other thing that we see here is that Marco basically says that this era belongs to Luffy's generation, and they got to keep their wits about them. They got to keep their heads on a swivel because things right now are getting real. And I like how after Boa Hancock has this moment where she shows that she's continuing to be down bad for Luffy, and she's like, dude, I just want to be married to Luffy. We get the flashback to what happened a few weeks earlier where the Navy went to attack Amazon Lily, and what we end up seeing is that they have a pacifier, and it's this younger child, and because of the brown skin and the eyes, I'm guessing that's the same race that you had with King. I might be mistaken on that, but I like that Otis continues to kind of build on that, and we see how Blackbeard has come here to Amazon Lily with the idea of claiming the powers that Boa Hancock has. And you basically see this three-way battle that takes place where Blackbeard's like, dude, Navy guys, I got no use for you. Get out of here. This doesn't concern you. And you see how the Navy is just waiting to get more information on whether or not they can directly engage Blackbeard. And so what ends up happening is that Boa Hancock refuses to bow down, and as the battle begins to start raging on, and you just see how strong the pacifier is, Blackbeard begins to start going into battle. Boa Hancock is using her petrification powers, and before she can actually really ramp things up, we get this gorgeous double page spread where Oda has Blackbeard just grab Boa Hancock by the throat, we see that so many of the Navy as well as Blackbeard's men have all been petrified, and Koby is the only one out the Navy who hasn't been petrified. And Blackbeard says, like, hey, you really lived up to your title of being the pirate empress. You really shown that you're worth it, and me getting my hands on your power is definitely going to come in handy. However, what Boa Hancock reveals is that, number one, the power means nothing without her beauty, but also, even if they kill her, and even if Blackbeard's able to take her devil fruit power, it's not going to be able to undo the spell. Only she can do it. And we see how even Koby takes a moment where he's like, dude, like, Boa Hancock's toughness is beyond anything I've ever imagined. And that's where we have the moment where Rayleigh ends up showing up, and Rayleigh begins to start doing the negotiation. And what I like about this is that you see how Rayleigh, just based off of his reputation and based off of his past events and the clout that he's built up being a member of Roger's crew, is able to mediate just off of that reputation. And he later concedes that right now in his old age, he can't defeat Blackbeard. But I think that that shows how crazy broken he is, because he tends to imply that if he would have been in his prime, he would have completely dismantled Blackbeard, which means that Prime Rayleigh was cracked. And so you start seeing how he is able to do the negotiations, and we find out a little bit more about what happened with what the Navy's done. So essentially, because of what they done with the pacifists, as well as with what they've done with Vegapunk Sea Prism Stone paddle ships, basically it allows them to replace the 7 warlords because they don't need them anymore. And it becomes a situation where Boa Hancock has a huge decision to make because her island is vulnerable. And what I like about this, though, is that we find out that the trip towards Egghead, which looks like that's going to be the next island we go to, is definitely going to be happening. But we get more teases, because when Boa Hancock is talking to her sisters, she has this moment where one of them says that that child that was fighting looked identical to their twin sister, or looks identical to their younger sister. And I know that Boa Hancock and them were slaves for the Celestial Dragons. And so it wouldn't surprise me if that actually is her younger sister, and she was just kind of messed with the same way that Kuma was. But what's interesting about this is that means that we could be seeing Boa Hancock in this Egghead arc, because her story's not done yet. And the chapter ends off where you have Koby. Koby's been kidnapped. I don't particularly care for that, but you can kind of see how Oda might be setting up Koby, because he's already seen as the hero of the Rocky Point incident, and it could be one of those things where Koby and Luffy end up teaming up the same way that Garp and Roger ended up teaming up. Only this time, because of what's going on with the world government, it might be those two teaming up in a battle because of some world government trickery. I do think that Koby has enough of a moral compass where if the truth gets out about the world government, he's going to actually question stuff. Even when you go back to what happened early on, he saw that not all pirates are bad. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Koby. The fact that Koby's been kidnapped by the Blackbeard pirates makes me wonder what Oda has planned for him. And that's actually my chapter question for you guys is, what do you guys think that Blackbeard has planned for Koby, and how dangerous would Blackbeard be if he actually got his hands on Boa Hancock's devil fruit power and was able to use it?